It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Tom Gardner, founder, CEO, and chief stewarding officer of Hay Creek Companies. Tom and his wife Janeen and their 4 sons live in Pittsville, Wisconsin, and Hay Creek started as a trucking company when Tom started out as a one-truck owner-operator in 1985. He soon became a multi-truck trucking company and then evolved into a pallet company in 2000. The company's next step was into new pallet manufacturing and pallet recycling, along with colored landscape mulch and wood fuel pellets, which is made from the waste system generated from the pallet recycling operation. Along with that, Tom also operates Hay Creek Cranberry and, partnering with his brother Butch, operates Gardner Cranberry and Badger State Fruit Processing. Tom Gardner, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you, Brent.
Wow, it's great to have you here, Tom. And, we just had a chance to chat a little bit, but we spoke, about 3 or 4 weeks ago as we were preparing for this. I know that you've been through some turbulent times with computer problems and issue, but, overall, how are you holding up? We're recording this just a few days before Thanksgiving, for which we're so grateful. But with the pandemic and all the other things that have been happening this year, how are you and your family and all your colleagues at Hay Creek doing?
We're actually doing very well. We had a little slowdown in business this summer, but typically our third quarter or our fourth quarter is our busiest. Our third quarter is our slowest.
Right.
And so we go from kind of idling and plugging along to wide open throttle, and it's been good. The pandemic has brought challenges, but it's also brought a lot of opportunity. So that's been good.
Yeah, in many ways, you're an essential industry, right? I mean, you're part of the transportation hub and logistics for so many companies. We'll get into talking to Hay Creek a little bit later. But did you have any kind of a shutdown early on, or were you guys pretty much operating all the way through the pandemic?
We've been operating all the way through. We've had
Right.
The COVID is kind of seems to be coming closer to home. Matter of fact, one of my sons got the virus here a few weeks ago. He was off to college and got tested, but we've had a few people out, but we're an essential business. We're the head of the supply chain when everything in our world moves on pallets, and so we've been blessed to be a part of that and to continue working all the way through.
That's awesome. Well, my prayers for your children. I know the younger folks tend to suffer this thing a little bit easier. My daughter actually was diagnosed just last week and, was sick for the first couple of days, but seems to be recovering. And gosh, it's just really starting to hit home. And I think that's going to continue to increase, but we'll continue to pray for those that are ill and sick and those, of course, that are grieving, those that have lost. But onto a happier subject. Let's talk about you. And we always like to kind of start with your early years. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like, Tom.
Well, I've been in central Wisconsin all my life. Grew up on a farm. Had a lot of opportunities growing up on the farm. Most of them were to work.
That seems to go with the territory, I think, right?
It does. It sure does. It sure does. And I love to work, and I love the farm, and so we had different things going on. We had cattle, we had hogs, we had milk cows. Of course, we had the field crops, all of that stuff. Later on, we got into the cranberry business, which I'm still in, growing cranberries in a pretty big way with my brother. I have one brother and I had 5 sisters. And the one
Oh
thing
my
that kind
gosh, big
of
family.
rocked the family was when my folks got a divorce when I was in junior high.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
uh, really kind of hit hard in the family. The
Yeah.
one thing that I always compare it to is like a bomb went off and there was a lot of carnage.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of stuff going on. But through it all, I
Yeah.
got to see God's hand at work because my father
Hmm.
remarried a widow that had 5 kids. And when her husband died,
Oh my gosh.
her oldest of
Wow.
5 was 9 years old. And so she was a farmer at the time, had a fairly large farm, 100 cows and 400 acres. And she stepped into that and took on the challenge. And she was concerned about losing the cows because if she lost the cows, she lost the farm. And so it was
Right.
a big step. But more importantly, she led my father to the Lord, which
Wow.
changed his life. Her priorities were basically God, her children, and the farm. And so
Yeah.
I got to see that modeled. And of course, that was outside the norm for me. I had no understanding of.
What age? How old were you, Tom, at that time? Were
I
you junior
was
high or high school?
13.
13. Yeah. Wow. Very influential years. Yeah. And then did you go back and forth? Did you spend some time with dad as well as some time with mom?
Yeah. I basically saw my mother on the weekends. So I had
Right.
stayed on the farm. Of course, I remember getting taken off the farm, and that lasted for about a week. I mean, that was a nice break. That's how I looked at it at the time from the farm. But I really missed. I didn't have any other purpose but to be working and growing up on a farm. You had so many opportunities to run equipment and you had responsibilities at a very young age that you normally wouldn't have not being on a farm. And so I missed that. And so I went, so there was half of the family that was grown and basically gone and kind of on their own. And then there was my 2 younger sisters. So it was me and 2 younger sisters that got to decide where we wanted to go to live.
Right.
And so I decided, I picked the farm, of course, and my next younger sister also decided to go to the farm, and my youngest sister stayed with my mom. And of course, my mom remarried, but my sister Nancy and I were on the farm.
You were a lot closer, yeah. So was it your stepmom who actually led you to Christ, Tom, or just kind of her influence and going to church and kind of picking up that thread at 13?
No, it wasn't her. She was a powerful influence in my father's life, and so I saw that influence. And I actually didn't come to the Lord till some years later when I was out of school. I had a tremendous amount of influence by friends and by pastors, and influence that I really didn't embrace at the time. I had a great bunch of kids I went to school with that invited me to church camp, invited me to Awana, and even though we had attended church for a long time, I really had no relationship. There was a pastor that came to stay at our house that was actually from India. And and later in the story, we'll get to that and the influence that had on my life in a later years. But really, I had a lot of great influencers, and even my father said, at that time, Tom, you're forming your habits for life at this young age. And I had some great teachers. Along the way, I just remember one junior high teacher, Mr. Jaraki, and he was my 7th grade science teacher, and just so much life lessons that came at those formidable years that really had an effect on me even to this day.
That's awesome. Were you a good student in school, Tom?
There was one thing that I wanted out of school, and that was me. I was a terrible student.
To get out, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, any chance that I got to get out of school to work, I was out. And that was from junior high all the way through high school. I was at best a C student. If I got a B on my report card, I was ecstatic. And if I was anything above a D minus, I was also ecstatic. So yeah, I was not a good student.
Other than work, were there other things you were involved with, sports or music, theater, were there other stuff that distracted you during those years, or pretty much out of school and back to the farm or elsewhere?
Not really. I had, I wasn't necessarily, was a kind of a skinny, scrawny kid, and I really didn't fit into the athletic picture very well. I running equipment and being on the farm and working was really my life.
Yeah.
I had to, I got the chance to go to church camp. I saw other kids being led to Christ. I really didn't understand that, didn't know what that was about. But at that time, it was having an impression on me. I got along good with the kids in school. I remember getting taken out in the hall by one of my teachers in seventh grade. Matter of fact, it was Mr. Jock, and he said, Tom, you're a good kid, but you're hanging around with people that aren't necessarily a good influence in your life. And so was, that really made me think about who I was hanging around with and why and what direction I was going with my life, and how much in later years, how much that would have an influence on, having a good peer group and having a good, solid, grounded people influencing your life.
Right. Makes so much sense. Was college ever on your radar screen at all?
At one time, I kind of was going through, because I had later in life, I kind of hit the road after I turned about 16. So I was all about the farm until I got my driver's license, and then after that, I wanted to go on the road. I mean, literally, and that led me to a career in truck driving. But after I kind of got burnt out from that, I did take a course. I called it the what do you want to be when you grow up course, and so that was as close to, and that was at a tech school, and that was just for a week or two, and that was as close as I ever got. I thought about going back to school, but it just never fit me well.
Well, you founded Hay Creek Pallet back in Jan of 2000, so 20 years. Congratulations on that. Going on 21, I guess, soon. But there's about a 20-year gap before you actually did that after you got out of high school. Give us kind of a thumbnail sketch. You said you drove trucks a little bit. What other kinds of work did you do? I'm sure a lot of it involved working on the farm. What are other things did you involve you with over that 20-year period?
Well, one of the things that I was involved was, like I said, when I got my driver's license, I wanted to drive. And at the time, my dad had done a lot of things other than just farming. So he was a Badger farm equipment dealer. He was a Vigortone feed dealer. And he moved up in the ranks in that while he was farming to a field manager position. And so one of the things that he was doing was selling this Vigortone feed. And with that, they needed a protein source. And that protein source was soybean meal. And the soybean meal was out in Minnesota. And even though I didn't have what was called a chauffeur's license, today would have been considered a commercial driver's license, my brother graciously said, "Hey," I said, "Hey, I don't have a commercial driver's license." He said, "Oh, you can use mine." So it didn't have a picture on it. So even though he's 10 years older than I was, I'd hit the road with his driver's license in my hand to go get this protein source in Minnesota, and therein started my trucking career.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long did you do that?
I did that until I was old enough to buy my own truck in 1985. I was at 21. You're legal to go out of state. And at 23, I had saved up enough money to make a down payment on a truck. And at that time, I became an owner operator. So I was really excited about that. And that was a real learning experience to have a loan and make payments, and basically took my life savings at that time and stuck it in this piece of equipment. And
well, it's starting a business, isn't it?
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And how many years did you do that?
I did that up until 1993. So,
Wow.
and that's what led me to the Lord. I had a guy in a truck stop in Boise, Idaho, that was relentless in talking about the Lord. And he basically
just met him at a truck stop.
We didn't have anywhere to go. And I don't know, one thing led to another. And I was standing there with a cigarette in my hand. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And this guy walks up to me and he said, the Lord took my smoking, took my drinking, and took my womanizing. And it's like, this guy's reading my mail.
No kidding. And you struck up a conversation, and how did that go?
It went really good up until the fact that the guy says, Tom, I really sense that you're ready to accept Christ in your life. And at the time, I had really I don't know what you call it, maybe a disdain for Christians. I didn't like Christian people. I thought they were weak, and I wasn't going to let this guy lead me to the Lord. And basically we ended the conversation. I went out to the truck, and I can remember sitting behind the wheel and just saying, Lord, I don't know what's going on here, but whatever it is, I'm in. And from that time forward, I'd like to say that my life changed in that instant, and really it did. But I was a lot of work. I was a work in progress, and I was a lot more work than progress. So,
did you ever see him again?
No, never saw the guy. And I tried to get a hold of him. I tried to find him the next day. I can remember what company he was working for, what kind of truck he was driving. I even, had tried to reach out to him, and I never saw him again.
I think you met an angel, Tom.
I could have.
I think the Holy Spirit was working that day. He needed to hear that message.
He sure was.
Well, that's awesome. So tell us about the leading up to Hay Creek. And, we read a little bit in your bio about founding that, and you saw the opportunity. Was that when you were on the road and doing a lot of trucking that you came up with the idea and
actually
pursued that direction?
I came to the Lord in 85, and shortly thereafter I got married, and shortly thereafter got divorced. So my life was kind of a little tumultuous, and all the time making money with a truck meant you were working constantly. It was my life, and it was the demise of my first marriage. So anyway, about 4 years later, I remarried to my wife of 26 years today, or not today, but I mean 26 years that we've been married. But it was a tough ride. I kind of burnt myself out on being on the road, and we had gotten married, and we were attempting to have children. And finally, she talked me into going to the doctor, and the doctor told me that I was going to need to have a surgery in order to be able to have children. And after I had the surgery, there would be about a 40% chance that I would ever that she would ever be able to conceive. And anyway, on the very day that I was supposed to have the surgery, we found out we were pregnant.
Oh, fantastic.
Nothing short of a miracle, and I'd been praying very hard for it. And so we were both extremely, extremely elated. And unfortunately, 25 weeks into the pregnancy, there was a problem. And the problem was that we didn't know it at the time, but she had an incompetent cervix. So I was on my way to Massachusetts with a load of cranberry vines, and I had to turn around and come back. And I never went on the road from that point forward. Yeah. I stayed with my wife in the hospital. Our son was born early at 1 pound, 4.5 ounces. And
oh my goodness. Wow.
So there was really touch and go. There was 2 times we came into neonatal intensive care, and our nurse was in tears because she didn't think our son was going to make it through the night.
Gosh.
So it was a pretty tough time for us. But it drew us together as a couple and really drew us closer to God.
Yeah. And how many kids today? Is he just your only, or have you had others?
Four.
All right.
Great. Did you have the surgery in the end?
No,
or
I never
not?
did. Never
You never did?
had the surgery.
That's great.
So the doctors aren't always right. So
That's right. That's right.
and of course we had all boys, and my wife was a little upset
boy.
after we had two, and then our third was born. She was hoping for a girl, but by the time we had our fourth boy, we knew we were done. And so
That's it. Wrap things up.
Yeah.
So tell us about Hay Creek. How did you come to coming up with that opportunity? And was that kind of, made the decision, I guess, to stop driving, so you needed to do some sort of work, or did you run across that opportunity during your travels? Because you were transporting a lot of crates during that period. I believe.
Well, we were doing pallet exchanges. So when I got off the road, I kind of expanded Hay Creek Express, the trucking part of it. And it was a tough transition to go from a guy that loves trucks and loves trucking to be a guy that owns a trucking company and having employees. And basically, I saw an opportunity in the fact that we were doing pallet exchanges at the time. So you would go to a dock with 20 empty pallets, they would take them off and they would put the load on on the pallets. And so you always seem to come up on the short end of the stick on that. And so we started repairing pallets. And I was really trying to avoid the pallet business. So one of my drivers at the time said, "Hey, that looks like something that I could do." And so I got him started doing that because I had a customer that had pallets to get rid of. I had another customer that needed those pallets. And so we found that niche. I helped him find that niche. 2 years into the business, he decided that he really didn't want to do it anymore. And one night he had a fire and his place burned. It was totally legitimate. It was by accident. And so that's what got me into the pallet business, because somebody had to pick up that business. It was a customer that we were hauling for. And a customer we were delivering to. And so I just kind of took that. I found a building to go into. Actually, it was a building that my brother had started a cold storage business in. He had sold it to another guy. I rented some space until I could get some space in a building that I owned. And so we were off and running in the pallet business.
So today, Hay Creek Companies includes the pallet business and also a trucking company too.
We discontinued the over-the-road operations in 2007 because the pallet business continued to grow. But from the pallet business, so we were rebuilding these pallets and we were developing a waste stream out of those pallets. And so with that waste stream, what are you going to do with it? We were looking for things to do other than burn it. That was not going well at all. We had a couple incidences where we were burning our waste wood. I was giving it away for firewood, and then a guy came along with a grinder and said, "Hey, I think you could turn this into something more profitable, and you could do something with that." So I have this mountain of waste. I bought a grinder, and we started making colored mulch. Well, that season lasted from April until July, and then what do you do after that? Well, then we started grinding it finer to make animal bedding. So that got us into another, basically a niche business of grinding material. And I had a mountain to get rid of, but then once you get rid of the mountain, you got to feed the grinder, and you've got customers that are looking for product. So now I'm going out and looking for other people's mountains of waste product. And that continues to this day. In 2015, we put in a wood fuel pellet machine. So we make wood fuel pellets out of that waste wood. So now we still have the mulch business, which is a limited market. We have the bedding business, which is a growing market. And now we have wood fuel pellets. So we have, from that waste wood stream, all of this other business that came along. And of course, because I couldn't get enough junk pallets to rebuild, we started making new pallets when we didn't have any other options. So we bought a machine in 2006, which I still have that machine today, builds about, between 600 and 800 pallets a day. And then 2 years ago, I bought a new machine that'll build 2,000 pallets a day.
Wow.
So that business really kind of took off just by, I guess, doing what entrepreneurs do, is find a problem and solve it.
Yeah. Yeah. How many employees today, and what's kind of the length and breadth of your business?
Right now, we're at about 40 total employees.
Yeah.
And so.
And is the pallet business regional? Are you supplying nationally? How does that?
It's extremely regional. We don't go generally past about 100 miles. And most of our customers are in the 50 to 75 mile range. But we've been blessed with a lot of food grade businesses here in central Wisconsin. There's a lot of food producing places that do
big dairy, a lot of cheese.
Yep. Cheese, butter, cranberries.
Yeah.
There's manufacturing here. We do heat treat our pallets, which makes them eligible to go out of the country. So over half of what we build is heat treated. And so a lot of what's made in our region gets exported at some point.
Right.
So we have a lot of manufacturing. Paper mills are big here. So there's just a lot of things going on, a lot of opportunities, and we've really kind of grown our business as the industries around us have grown.
That's fantastic. Well, we're both C12 members, and for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with C12, it's a Christian business owners advisory group. We're international now. I think we've got close to 3,000 members last time I looked, and about 125 chapters. You've been involved a little longer than I have. I joined up here in Connecticut in the latter part of 2017. Tell me a little bit and speak to us a little bit about how God and your belief in Christ has been involved in the business. So, would you consider yourself a faith-based business, and does that play out in your vision and mission, or do you do that in other ways in terms of how you honor God?
It's really the heartbeat and the core of our business. So in 2012, I felt it was at a point in my life when I felt like, am I being called into full-time ministry? And as I searched that, prayed through that, I happened to be thumbing through a World magazine, and I came across an ad for C12. And several months of this wasn't something that happened overnight, but it was several months that went by, and I keep looking at this and looking. Finally, I pick up the phone and make the phone call, and luckily my chair had called seeing the ad in World Magazine, had called C12 before I did, and they said, we don't have a Central Wisconsin group, but would you like to start one? Luckily, he took the call to do that because it was shortly thereafter, and I was one of the, in the first year that he was doing C12, members, which is 2012, I got into C12. Yeah. And other than the time other than coming to the Lord, nothing has changed my life and business like C12 has. We rewrote our mission statement, which is striving to honor God in all we do, helping people develop, pursuing excellence while growing profitably. Our core values are grounded in caring, honesty, respect, integrity, social responsibility, and thankfulness. And it's really it's how we do business. It's why we do business. I have come to the fact that I'm no longer the CEO, but the chief stewarding officer,
chief steward officer.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and I'll tell you what, it goes back to what I said earlier about my seventh grade teacher talking about your influences and influencers and who you hang around with.
That's right.
As these 12 guys in our C12 group, after being in it for so many years, and I get to do my core business presentation. I'm looking forward to that in the month of December, which is something we get to do on an annual basis, being in the C12 group, and kind of lay it all out before the group and get godly counsel. And not just once a year, but every meeting. And in my one-on-ones with Mark Martin is my chair, and he does a great job. He's just a godly man, and there's just so many benefits that I have gotten received from being in a C12 group. It's a great thing.
No, I agree with it. I kind of consider them my non-executive board of advisors, right? And have never felt that I've gotten better, more insightful, advice and leadership and ideas, because they're talking to me from their heart, and their heart's a Christian heart of brother and sisters that are members there. And it's been a major impact on how I've run my business too. That's so great to hear. And do you have a key players group as well? Are there other people in your organization that are involved in C12?
I do. And it's really been a blessing to make us more of a cohesive team. Right now, I've got two. After the first of the year, I've got three people that'll be in key players. And so each month we go through the segments and we implement the things that we learn it's really been it's an additional blessing to have people in the key players group.
And for those of you that are listening, key players is kind of the other members of the team that also meet with other key players, right? I think that's pretty much how it works in your region as well, that are, the number 2 or number 3 in those operations. And what a great way to continue to get consistency and delivery against your mission and goals. Tell me a little bit about your leadership style. I mean, you were an independent operator, you're an entrepreneur for many years, running your own trucking company, and then, you buy the pallet company, and then you start, going into different businesses, and you're managing people. How has your leadership style evolved over time?
Oh, it's changed a lot over the years.
Work in progress?
Oh, is it ever? And still to this day, sometimes it's a daily work in progress and a daily struggle. But I'm really, even though there probably isn't a day that goes by that I don't think back to my school years and wish that I would have studied more, because I've really become a lifelong learner, and it seems like the more you learn, the more you learn you don't know, and so over time, to start out with, to be a guy that loves trucks and loves trucking to a guy that's running a business and managing,
which is a very
people.
Independent operation, right?
Is
you're
it
on
ever?
The road a lot, and
man, you don't, when you're an owner operator, you're your own boss, you're doing your own thing, and it's on your own time frame. And I think in the last few years, the biggest thing that I have learned is to delegate. And sometimes I think that I can delegate and leave it at that. But the one thing that I've learned, because I've lately kind of become a podcast junkie, and I love your podcast and I'm learning from them. But, things that I've learned in C12, and especially people like Patrick Lencioni, and we've implemented the traction model of doing business. There's just things that it just continually evolve. And how I handle people, and how I'm really called to have the tough conversations, the crucial conversations, to have to be a coach. One of the things that I thought in the past was, hey, I hired good people, I'm gonna step back and let them go. Well, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, they're still getting coached. I mean, some of the greatest people of all time, they're still getting coached, and so that's really. When I look at my people, I've got great people. The Lord has blessed me with great people, but they still need everyone, including myself, and that's where the C12 group comes in. I still need to be coached, and we're all a work in progress. But my leadership style has changed over the years to really have a heart for my people, and knowing. From a Christian perspective, the difference that God's made in my life and the difference that He will make in theirs. And I always want to be a good witness, no matter what I'm doing. And believe me, I fall short on a daily basis. But the cool thing is when you evolve to a point where your team is not afraid to call you out on things, and your team says, Tom, I think we could do it better if we did it this way or that way or the other, whatever that happens to be. But being able to delegate is, the adage of, if I want to have something done right, I got to do it myself. I had to put that aside and just say, it may not have been the way that I would have done it, but it's getting done, and people are learning and growing, and there's probably nobody that I know of in business that could have made as many mistakes as that I have, and still survive and still learn from them. And so it's being able to extend the grace to others that's been extended to me through the years. Yeah. And so it's really been humbling. And
well, that's one of the biggest challenges as an entrepreneur, right? Because again, you run your own business, you kind of make your own decisions, and then all of a sudden you've got these people working for you. You go, wait a minute, I want you to do it my way instead of doing it your way. So how do you know? How do you make that call on, when to micromanage and when to stay out of people's way, Tom?
That's a tough call, and it's a really tough call, because sometimes I love it when my people push back and say, hey, just let me take this, I got it,
Right.
I can handle this. And sometimes it's having the faith in people to make those decisions, but then coming on the backside of that and having the conversations about, so what would this look like if we would have possibly done it different? And, when, we've kind of gotten to the point, and I've tried to get to this point for a long time, but get to the point where I don't mind you bringing problems, and I want you to bring the problems, and we'll work on them together, either individually or as a team. But when you bring me a problem, bring me a solution, and and so that we know what direction we can go in to try to make this better.
What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
Humble, hungry, and smart. That's the, and
that's
I know
classic Patrick.
Right, exactly. Lots of Patrick, and it becomes a bit of a cliche, but it works. If you're looking for those three things and you get your people on board, that has been the biggest thing, is getting your people on board. If we're hiring for those three qualities, and they get it, they want it, they got the capacity for it, it's like, it just works. And when we hire outside of that, 9 times out of 10, if it doesn't turn into that, it ends up not working out.
And how do you personally interview and hire? How do you get at that? Hungry, and humble, hungry, and smart. Great, characteristics, things that, we look for, but, kind of understanding that, the humility part's probably the easiest, right? Because you can tell someone that maybe is a little bit full of themselves versus, willing to pass along the credit for the things they've done to others. But the hungry and smart part, tell us a little bit about how you get at that.
Well, I think asking the right questions, probably if I had to ask a question that would make a difference in an interview is, when's the last time you were able to serve someone, and what was it and how did it go? So getting to the point where, if they have a servant-hearted attitude, and then that's really the place to start. And then asking them questions that they may not have an answer for, and seeing how they handle that. I mean, purposely asking questions, and are they willing to ask a question? Are they willing to say, hey, I don't have an answer for that, but I can get it for you, or I'll look into that. I want to learn that, so there's all of that kind of stuff going on.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well, Tom, you've been very generous with your time, but we've got a couple of last questions for you. And it's hard not look to the future. Gosh, we've been in this pandemic for how many months now? Is it 9 years? No, 9 months, but it feels like 9.
It does. It sure does.
When is it ever going to end, or could it end? We've got a vaccine on the horizon, or several of them, so that's good. But, what changes do you think you see ahead? Do you think there'll be some permanent changes in your business, and, how that's been impacting your customers, et cetera? Do you think we'll kind of go back to a normal, or will there be a new normal ahead for us?
I honestly think there's going to be a new normal. And one thing that I think we've all learned through this pandemic is to expect any election, and that for that matter, expect the unexpected. I mean, there's just things that are going on that we didn't, a year ago, we would have never seen this coming. And it's like, expect the unexpected, and you don't know what's around the next corner, but being ready for whatever it is that's coming, kind of the one day at a time mentality, but having a vision for what could be around the next corner. What to be looking for. One of the things that we've been talking about in C12 is our KPIs, the key performance indicators, and leading and lacking indicators, and all of that kind of thing, and try to get a better handle, and get your business going in real time, that you understand, what's happening today and what could happen in the future, and just to try to be ready for whatever that is.
Last question, we ask this of all of our guests, Tom, and what career and life advice would you give to someone that perhaps has their eyes on their own corner office, or wants to be an entrepreneur like yourself?
I think my core message would be just to be ready. What's God preparing you for? My verse from this morning was from James 1, 2, and 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And I think that's the one thing that you have to be ready with is perseverance. What's that look like? Are we in this for the long haul? What's God doing? What's he getting me ready for? Everything that's happening now is getting me ready for something in the future. And I think that's the message that I would have is just, as you look for opportunities, as entrepreneurs look for opportunities and they're going to find them, what's that look like? What are those opportunities? If you're a problem solver, there's going to be new problems coming down the pike every day, and just being ready to figure out what can we do to help solve that, and what can we do to help other people, and to get to the point where you're others centered. I mean, that's part of the humble, hungry, and smart, but to turn your focus not on ourselves and what's happening in our world, but to turn it towards others. And how can we, for us, it's to grow the people that are growing our company. Yes.
Tom Gardner, owner, president, and founder of Hay Creek Pallet and Hay Creek Companies. Thank you so much for joining me into the Corner Office.
Thank you, Brent. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.